Hello jackals! In this video we'll be using some bending magic to make a transition that rolls and unfolds from one side to the other, and you can also use it to make a page flip. Now let's get digital. The easiest way to make a transition is to apply an existing one. I'll be using two video clips. Go to Effects, Video Transitions. You can apply any that you want. Then right click on it. If it's not a fusion transition, you will have to convert it. Once it's converted, if the inspector is opened, you can select this button to go into the fusion page, or you can also right click on the transition and open it in the fusion page. This is the cross dissolve transition. We won't use it, so I'll simply delete it, and we have the two clips. Now to make this transition, it will use the 3D space. So in this case, one way to do it is to use an image plane, and the other is to use a shape 3D node, and I'll show you both ways. So the media in 1 is the left clip, and the media in 2 is the right clip. I'll use the image plane on the second clip, and at the end these two clips will merge together, so something like this. This one will be in the back, and this one will then be laid on top, or the other way around, depending on how you do the animation. Now you can't connect it, we need the render node, so you can see it and display it. As you can see, the image plane is very small. In this case, because it's a simple composition, we can go to the transform and simply adjust the scale. What I suggest to do is that you zoom in, hold Ctrl and do fine adjustment here. Maybe something like this looks good enough. So now I have the scale applied, and the next step is to make this image bend. Control space or shift space, tap in bend, add the bend node, we'll add it to the image plane. Now you can do this in a couple of ways, and you can get some cool looking results. If you adjust the amount, as you can see, this will first go in the Y direction. If you want to scale this in the X, so you can go from left to right, you will choose the X, but you have to adjust the angle to 90. At this point, as you can see, the image is pretty jaggedy. So if you want to clean this up, you'll go to the image plane, controls, and adjust the subdivisions. If 40 is not enough, you can increase the value maybe to 100 to make it really smooth. In this case, I didn't see really much of a difference, though I guess 40 was good enough. Now because this will be a transition and it will be fast, I suggest you don't go crazy with this amount, especially if you will be using blurs and other effects after this. Now at this point, the image is fixed in the center, so this is where this center comes in. So it goes from one side to the other, and you can also use the range to animate this. Now the animation that I want is for this amount to be -1, so that the ends connect just like this, but on the other side. I'll go maybe from the left side. The minimum amount by default is 0, so it doesn't go over the left edge. I'll fix that by typing a negative value, -1. And let's see how much I need. I'll go to the beginning, so frame 0, I'll keyframe this value. And the animation will end at the end. Let's go with frame 25. Just in case we add some other effects, we'll also have a few frames so that we can fade out those effects. Now let's see what I want. Now the center position has to come to 0, so it doesn't move forward, and then I'll just simply adjust the amount, so it comes to this point. So I also have to keyframe the amount. So this will be 0, and at this point it will be -1. So not the best. Let's see how this looks like. It looks a lot better. The only thing that I had to do was determine the position. In this case, I chose frame 7 and set the center to 0. So the center is not 0 at this point, it can be earlier. Now let's take a look how it looks like. If we adjust the amount from 1 to 0, So just adjusting the amount from -1 to 1, we get two different transitions. To make the book flip page effect, go to the image plane, transform and change the Z rotation to what you want. I'll go with 15. Now this is rotated. Let me just show you how that looks like. I won't be using the camera in this composition, but just so you can see how this actually looks like in the 3D space. So this is how it looks like. And now what we want to do is to rotate this back so that it's in line with the camera view. And to do that, you can use a merge node. Go to the rotation, transform and rotation, type in equals in the Z rotation and connect it to the rotation of this one, and go to the front and type in minus. So now as you can see, it's straight again. I can disconnect the camera now so that it is in the same plane view as it was in the beginning. If you don't like the angle, you can come to the image plane and change the Z value to what you want. And this will now rotate because this merge has the same value as the image plane, except with the minus. Now this moment, the image plane is just this image, which is the media in. And what we can also do is add some lights to this. So I'll just add a spotlight. And to see any lights, we have to go to the render node and enable them. And I'll just unpin the plane 3D. Previously I've pinned it so that I could connect the merge 3D to the image plane. And instead of the image plane, you can also use the transform 3D and also connect this rotation to the image plane rotation Z axis. So this is where the spotlight is located. That is why this is black. So I'll just move it in front. One downside of using lights is that they are very bright and you can't really match the original image. But what you do get in return is the shadow if you want. So in this case, what I could do is maybe copy the spotlight and now I'll simply position it to the back of the video clip. But for this spotlight to have an effect, I have to go to the image plane, material, and enable two-sided. And now I see the other side of the image plane, which is the same as the front. And now all I have to do is adjust the intensity. But as I said, this with the lights is not an ideal solution. You could use an ambient light, adjust the intensity to 1, which will basically make it the same as the original image. But in this case, anything else that you add will not have an effect that you may want, because you can increase the light, but you can't really take away from the ambient light. And now let's take a look at the Shape 3D node. It's an image plane by default. We'll change this to cube. We'll also be using the Bender node, so I'll simply copy and paste it. Let me just do the basic composition. As you can see with the cube, it's a cube, so we have to adjust it so it has the same proportion as the composition, which in most cases will be a 16 by 9 resolution. So in the Shape 3D node, unlock the width and height. I'll leave the height as is. The width, I'll adjust it to be equals, multiply by 16 and divide it by 9. Now we just have to scale this up. So you can go to transform and adjust the scale. Now if you use the cube, this will be a bit slow because it has 6 sides as opposed to the image plane. And before I make the scale adjustment, also adjust the depth. As you can see, this will put the transform in a different location. So now I have that. We have the animations. I could maybe do this one in the Y direction. And it's done automatically, as you can see. I'll just now do the same as before. Copy this merge, connect the media in. With the cube, it's the same as with the image plane. You have the subdivisions, so you can adjust them. You don't need any of the depth, so this could also be just 1. You can apply the lights if you want, but you don't have to. And the last thing that I wanted to show you was also with the cube, not this one, but if you wanted to have the opposite side to have a different image than the front side. So in this case, when the image rolls over, it would show this background. In that case, Control space or Shift space, type in cube and use this one, Cube 3D. With the cube selected, go to the material and you have faces, 6 of them. You'll use the front one and the back one. You'll have to adjust all of the faces to be white, because if you don't, well, you'll see in this one in the back. Let's just change the color to pink. What you'll do then, you can simply connect the media ins. So this one is in the front and the bottom one is in the back. Connect this to this bender. So this basically does what I wanted to do. It does have some white sides. I'll fix that in a bit. As you can see, this is purple, just as I've left it. That is why this color has to be white. Unless you want to fade this out, to have it as a shade, you can do it like this. Now, as for the huge sides, these ones, go to the control, size, adjust it the same as before, 0.01, or even smaller if you want. Adjust the subdivisions, and adjust the width and the height. So you can also leave the height as is, and just do here 16 divided by 9, and then go to the transform and adjust the scale to what you need. When you hold the control, you have a precise adjustment when using the field. If the playback is not smooth in the Fusion page, what you can do, right click here, disable high quality and disable motion blur, and you can also go to playback and change the timeline resolution to quarter. That's what I also have, as you can see, and you can also disable the cache. So this doesn't cache out. So I'll just purge the cache. Now the effect is done. I've shown you all of the different approaches that you can use, and now you can simply add some effects. We could use some shadow. Let's add the drop shadow to this. You'll want to change the drop angle to 0 so that this is always visible, even if you have this option with the transform. As you can see, we now have the shadow, and even if I change the Z rotation, the shadow is always there. What you also have to change is the drop distance, set that to 0 so that it is also visible at this point. Now the next step that I'll show you is how to make the macro. So I'll just use this composition that has the adjustable rotation. You'll select all of the nodes, then right click on the last node, make a macro. So in the image plane, we want to change the rotation of the Z-axis. Enable this. You can change the name so that you know what it is. This will basically affect the page flip, from which direction the page flips. And in the drop shadow, you could adjust the shadow strength. So in the drop shadow, enable the shadow strength. It already has the name and the blur. And we can rename this to shadow blur. And once you have the macro done, go to Save as Group, Fusion, Templates, Edit, and this will be a transition. Give it a name, save it, go to the effects, type in the name. If it's not visible, like in my case, you have to reset DaVinci Resolve. The other option that you can also use is right click and create a transition preset. But in this case, when you also add this new template onto a timeline, it will say this, Effect Cross Dissolve, or something else depending on what you used as the original transition. And now that I have reset DaVinci Resolve, the flip page transition shows up. So now I'll just use this image and this video clip. Let me add the transition on. Now my PC is not fast, so it does take a little bit to render this out. And I would have to adjust this video clip. Now one thing that I didn't do is that I didn't make this adjustable. As you can see, the transition now ends at this point. So to make the transitions dynamic, you will go to the options that you've animated. In this case, I've pretty much only animated 2 properties. So right click on the property that you've animated, insert, keyframe stretcher, and I'll also do this on the center. Then go to the modifiers. Now this goes from 0 to 29, so the source will be 29 frames. And the animation ends on frame 25, so 0 to 25. And I'll do the same for the amount. So 29, 0 to 29, 25. So this will now stretch the animation based on the actual duration of the transition. So now let me make the macro. In the image, we want to rotate the Z, and we can give it a name. And in the shadow, we can adjust the shadow strength and the blur and give this a name, shadow blurry. As for the distance and the angle, we could also adjust that. So go to File, Save as Group, Fusion, Templates, Edit, Transition, Flip Page. I'll save it as Flip Page 1. If it doesn't show up immediately, when you go to the Edit page, you will have to restart DaVinci Resolve. This is the first one that I've saved. It has the shadow strength, so I can adjust that. I can adjust the blur, and I can adjust the flip direction. So now this flip page, it will have the same options as the previous one. The difference between the two is this one is now adjustable in the duration, as you can see. Now I had some issue with the transition after I've added the keyframe stretcher. These two media ins were switched. And to fix that, what I've done is I've simply selected the merge first, then the image plane and the drop shadow, because these two have the animations that I could adjust. And I've selected all of the other nodes, right clicked, make a new macro. I'll simply do the adjustment as before, so rotation, and the drop shadow will have these two options. I'll save it as flip page 1. I'll put it on this clip. So it now works as it should, with the difference being, now that I stretch the transition, it will also last as long. And that's how you can use the bending to make transitions that also look like page flips. And if you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and until next time, jackals, keep it digital.